Kinji stood among a group of slave workers, receiving orders from their leader, who told them they had to work as hard as possible to stay alive. The leader continued to motivate them, while Kinji could barely stand it anymore, wishing the ground would swallow him up. Their task was to explore the mines, searching for magic gems while fighting off monsters. As everyone was working, one of them suddenly collapsed and started acting strangely, as if he had lost his mind from not having a day off for 3 months. Kinji began to feel anxious and afraid of what awaited him in this world. Suddenly, a supervisor arrived and hit him, saying that Kinji wasn't working properly and hadn't accomplished anything. Kinji tried to defend himself by saying he was just a little tired but would work harder. Afterward, Kinji vented his anger on a board displaying the supervisor's picture. He thought, "What is this? At the end of my life, I have to work with these lowlifes?" Kinji worked 16 hours a day, and if he was lucky, he only got a day off every 2 or 3 weeks. Their beds were horrible, like being in a prison, and they only bathed once a month. Kinji couldn't stand this harsh slave life. He felt broken and wondered, "Why is this happening to me?" Suddenly, he heard one of his co-workers being scolded by a living skeleton, who said that he had warned him many times to ask if he didn't know something instead of acting foolishly. Kinji was starving and began counting his money after all the wage deductions. He thought, "I never imagined a piece of bread would one day feel like a feast to me." Suddenly, the money he was going to use for food fell. Panicking, he began running after it, thinking that if he lost it, he wouldn't be able to eat for 2 whole days. The money finally fell into a strange place. Kinji quickly approached his colleague, Wannabe, and asked if he had any free time. They both went to a restaurant far from the workplace. Wannabe mentioned that he heard the team leader scolding Kinji this morning for not working. Kinji responded by telling him to ignore that fool. Wannabe said the restaurant looked expensive and that it would take a full month's salary to eat there. He asked how Kinji planned to pay, and Kinji replied that he actually didn't have any money and had just borrowed a small amount to survive. Wannabe was shocked and said he had heard that Kinji had a lot of debt. Kinji confirmed this and explained that he had tried to make a deal with a rich man, but it failed, and he was accused of planning a murder, which only made his debts pile up even more. Wannabe became frightened and wanted to leave. He said he had an important appointment and had to go now. Kinji interrupted and said he knew Wannabe wanted to escape this slave life and become wealthy. Kinji offered Wannabe an opportunity he couldn't refuse. Wannabe listened to the offer, while their leader once again scolded Kinji, but this time Kinji cut him off and said they wanted to go on a mining mission. Their leader was surprised and said that finally, his team would get back to work. He immediately approved and encouraged them but warned that if anything happened to them, no one would take responsibility or take care of them. This mining mission was much more dangerous than their usual work because they had to go deeper into the mine and face stronger monsters. Kinji and Wannabe prepared, and Kinji said that the gems found in the deepest parts were much more valuable, and they would receive a bonus if they found rare materials. Wannabe felt a bit nervous and said it wouldn't be as easy as Kinji made it sound. Kinji told him to just follow along. It turned out that Kinji had found a secret passage because of the money that had fallen earlier, and the passage led directly to the 3rd level of the mine. The two entered and discovered many valuable gems. Kinji said they should collect as many as possible. Wannabe thanked Kinji for choosing him to come along. Wannabe said that people had always thought he was slow and a poor learner, and this was the first time someone had asked for his help. Kinji responded that he chose Wannabe because they were both friendless and disliked by everyone. Time passed, and they managed to collect a lot of gems. Kinji said that if they kept working like this, they'd make a lot of money. But suddenly, a huge monster appeared above them and attacked with full force. They managed to dodge at the last second, but both were terrified, and Wannabe asked, "How can we escape this monster?" Kinji began thinking hard about how to save them and said that he certainly wouldn't die in this place. Suddenly, Kinji had an idea and told Wannabe that he would act as bait. Wannabe was shocked and asked, "Are you crazy?" A man said to his friend, "Hey, can you really finish this?" His friend replied, "Trust me, I'll take care of everything." However, his friend kept refusing his help until the man forced him to accept it and face the giant. The giant caught him and almost ate him, but at the last moment, the man, Kinji, intervened and asked the giant, "Can you understand human language?" The giant replied that he could. Kinji then offered a deal. The giant would protect them from dangerous monsters, and in return, Kinji would give him all the food he wanted. The giant laughed strangely and said that he had never met a human like Kinji. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion, and a mysterious girl appeared, introducing herself as Rimu. She said that she accepted the deal and would protect them in exchange for food. Kinji laughed, and said that his life was finally going to improve, and everything would return to normal. A few days passed, and Kinji successfully improved the team's stats. However, his plan didn't go smoothly because Rimu ate too much food, and he nearly went crazy from running out of money. Kinji said they needed to gather more gems to make more money. While in the dungeon, they found many magical tools and weapons, while Rimu kept whining for food. Kinji was confused about how to handle it, and said that he didn't have any food at the moment. Wannabe, his friend, finally gave part of his tail to Rimu. Kinji was shocked, but Wannabe said it was fine. His tail would grow back. Kinji then found a magical tool that could control anything, and he decided to use it to control his friends so they would work for him. He felt his power had returned, and he showed no mercy. Wannabe warned Kinji not to deceive his friends like that, but Kinji insisted it was for their own good so they could make more money. However, the workers started to grow exhausted and performed very poorly. Kinji said he needed to make a new plan and reorganize the team. He went to Wannabe and said he had gotten the energy potion as requested, but the amount wasn't enough. Wannabe suggested diluting it with water and distributing it to everyone. However, the effects were too strong, and the workers nearly collapsed. If they stopped working, everything would fall apart, and they wouldn't make any more money. Kinji asked Rimu to strengthen the tool, but due to the immense pressure, the tool eventually broke, and the workers were freed from his control. As the workers returned to normal, Kinji was unaware of what had happened. When he referred to the workers as lifelong slaves, they overheard him and were furious. They attacked Kinji until he was helpless. Rimu came to him, saying she was hungry. With great difficulty, Kinji responded, "Can't you see my condition?" Rimu threatened that if she wasn't fed, she would eat Kinji herself. The next day, the news spread throughout the company, and their leader learned that Kinji and his team had moved to the 3rd floor without the company's permission. As punishment, they were transferred to the 8th team, whose job was to clean the dungeon and collect treasure chests, a task looked down upon by other teams. Kinji felt disgusted with himself in the new team. He said that he needed to get out of this company soon because all he ever got was trouble and mounting debt. Wannabe, feeling hopeless, said that he didn't want to continue living like this, working in a job he hated until he died without anyone remembering him. Kinji, though exhausted, was determined to live the life he had always dreamed of. But would he succeed in achieving his dream or give in to reality? He hid his meat, and when she stole it, Kinji got angry and tried to take it back, but she kicked him, sending him flying into the wall. The next day, Kinji went to work and received boxes to be filled. A staff member warned him to be careful with a particular box because it contained medicine that was worth 3 months of wages. Kinji took it and began working, feeling very tired because he hadn't eaten anything since the day before. He said that this evil company would soon destroy him. Suddenly, he heard someone scream, and a member of the 3rd team, who had been fighting a monster, ran toward him. Kinji stopped him and asked what was going on. He replied that a monster was chasing him, and he was lucky Kinji was there to help him escape. He said that as a member of the 3rd team, Kinji must follow his orders without question. Kinji was angry and was about to retaliate, but suddenly he saw a group of giant ants behind them. Both of them immediately ran as fast as they could, even though Kinji said that his job was to kill monsters, not to run away from them. His friend responded that there were too many monsters, and he had been separated from his team and couldn't find them. Kinji and his friend jumped into the water and managed to escape, getting out of danger. Afterward, Kinji immediately went to inform the manager about the impending disaster. However, another teammate calmly told the employee that a swarm of giant ants was approaching, but the employee didn't believe it, thinking it was impossible since monsters couldn't escape from Damos. The manager told Kinji that he wouldn't send reinforcements based on something with no proof. Kinji was furious and said that if they didn't act, everything would be destroyed. Suddenly, they heard the sound of soldiers calling for help, and the ants began attacking the building. Kinji searched for something to use and found a strange box containing a special potion that could temporarily turn them into anything. The 3 of them drank the potion and turned into ants, allowing them to lead the other ants back to Damos. They had to follow the ants into Damos to escape before they turned back into humans. However, the manager locked the door to Damos after they entered. Kinji said that once the potion wore off, they'd be in big trouble. Kinji kept searching for a way out of Damos before their identities were exposed. Then, he got an idea and approached one of the ants. He spoke to it, introducing himself as the great guide who helped ants everywhere. He told it that their queen was cruel and only cared about herself. However, the ant refused to accept its fate and decided to help the other ants like itself. Kinji then asked the ant how much rest it got in a week and whether it received any rewards. The ant replied that it didn't get any rest or rewards. Kinji pretended to be shocked and asked how it could accept such conditions. He told the ant that if things continued like this, it would die and should demand its rights from the queen. Kinji then brought the ant to the employee, and his other friend began doing the same with the other ants until they gathered all of them. They convinced the ants to stage a protest against the queen to claim their rights and equality. All the ants followed Kinji, chanting his name. Kinji said he would stay with them until they achieved their goal and avenged the unjust queen. All the ants went to confront the queen. At that moment, Kinji and his two friends had returned to their human forms, and the queen was shocked to see them. She couldn't understand how her subjects could follow humans. Kinji said she was a terrible queen, forcing her workers to toil day and night without reward. The ants demanded equality. The queen was bewildered and didn't understand what was happening. She said that without her, the kingdom would collapse and cease to exist. Kinji said that no matter what she tried, they wouldn't listen to her anymore. He told her that she no longer held power. Suddenly, the queen transformed into a monstrous giant and threatened to eat Kinji alive. But then, Rem appeared and confronted her, saying she was hungry and would eat the queen. The queen was terrified of Rem and immediately fled. Rem chased her, along with the other ants, to devour them. Kinji stopped Rem by throwing a piece of meat he had stolen from the warehouse. Rem quickly ate it, and the ants were astonished to see that Kinji had saved them, including the queen. All the ants praised Kinji, and they finally managed to leave Damos safely. The next day, Kinji returned to work, and Wannabe apologized for having to cover his duties for the past 2 days. However, Kinji was in a great mood and told Wannabe not to worry. Kinji recounted what had happened and said that the company needed a great leader like him. He revealed that he had started his plan to take over the company and asked Wannabe to join him and help. Wannabe was shocked to learn that Kinji had formed a full organization, working with the ants, their queen, and Rem the monster. The organization was called the Dark Organization. Days passed, and the two of them underwent rigorous training. Their trainer was a cruel creature who cared for no one. He said that starting today, they should consider themselves pigs and must work day and night. After that, they all prepared to enter Damos and begin their mission. A group of recruits was undergoing training, and they only had 3 minutes to get ready. If they were even 1 second late, they would be punished. Once prepared, they started a mission to fight a giant 3-headed monster. Their goal was to defeat the monster as part of their training. However, Kinji, one of them, felt frustrated because all his plans kept failing. He wished he could use an army of ants to gather gems so he could get promoted to the 3rd team and live a luxurious life without working again. Unfortunately, he realized that it was all just a dream, and in this place, there was no way out except death. No one could fight the monster. They couldn't even stand in front of it. Their supervisor eventually ended the training by blowing up the monster himself. He told them that if they stayed like this, they would never make it to the 3rd team. He also warned them that if they failed again, he would blow up the monster along with them. The next day, they returned for a 2nd round of training, but everyone was exhausted and couldn't move. They hadn't been allowed to eat for 2 days. The supervisor explained that this training was about endurance. They had to run until they reached the mountain peak. One of them complained that they would die if they didn't eat. The supervisor responded that the main goal of this training was to learn how to work under pressure to earn money. So far, they hadn't achieved anything, which was why they were still left starving. The training began, and Kinji was at his limit. He even tried to eat grass. However, Winnie stopped him and warned that the grass was poisonous and could drive him insane. Kinji grew angry, not knowing what else to do. Winnie then explained that she knew a lot about plants because she was raised in the countryside. After hours of walking around the mountain, the training finally ended. Then, that sly pig came and told them it was time for the 3rd training, which was mental training. They were ordered to sit with their eyes closed until they were given permission to stop. Kinji felt annoyed with this ridiculous training, which he thought had nothing to do with skill development. Suddenly, the supervisor hit him and told him to focus his mind. Whenever someone daydreamed, they were hit. The training turned into torture, and the supervisor began insulting them as stupid pigs. They were given a large book and instructed to read it every night before bed. Everyone started feeling sick of the situation, and some of them even considered running away, except for Winnie, who seemed calm and unbothered by anything. Kinji sarcastically remarked that Winnie was the perfect example of a slave. However, Kinji began to feel something strange, as if he was starting to enjoy the work. The next day, the training resumed. They were ordered to dig into the ground until they reached the deepest point. Winnie enjoyed the training under the sun, feeling refreshed and enthusiastic. Day after day, they began to enjoy the training more and more, feeling increasingly optimistic about life. It turned out that the supervisor was using a magical device to control their minds, forcing them to work against their will. After completing all the training, the supervisor forced them to buy expensive statues under the pretense of them being rewards. They were all tricked into buying them, including Kinji. They were taken aboard a large ship, unaware of their destination. When Kinji's statue broke, he felt something strange, and the curse placed on him was lifted. Winnie was very happy with her statue, but Kinji smashed it and slapped Winnie's face to break her free from the curse. Winnie recovered, and it turned out that this had all been part of their plan. They had spread mind-disrupting plants so that the curse wouldn't affect them, allowing them to return to their normal state. Kinji laughed, saying that now it was time for revenge. One of the staff members approached the supervisor and informed him that someone had placed disruptive plants in the food, causing them to lose control. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion on the island where they were. Kinji and Winnie finally reached the third team's office, where they would be working. A strange girl appeared and introduced herself as Kinu, their new leader. Winnie was shocked to see her because Kinu was actually a famous hero who had discovered the Philosopher's Stone in Damas. Kinu felt embarrassed and lightly punched Winnie, but the punch was strong enough to send Winnie flying into the wall. Winnie passed out and was taken to the hospital. Kinu apologized to Kinji for what had happened and promised to explain everything once Winnie recovered. Kinu explained that their jobs were divided and their salaries depended on the type of work they did. She showed Kinji the company store, which was filled with high-quality weapons and goods. She said that no other store compared to theirs because all the equipment was top-notch, and no one could match it. She was creating an atmosphere where they began pressuring the workers to buy the equipment with their own wages so the company could make more profit. If there were losses, they would have to cover them. She told the woman that the company was corrupt and deceitful. King got angry and grabbed her, saying that this company was one of the best, and working here was great. Kinji responded by saying that she was just another one of their slaves. Suddenly, Kinu picked him up and took him to a strange place. He asked, "What is this place?" And she replied that it was the third floor of Die, Massachusetts. Kinji was confused and said it didn't look like anything he was used to seeing. Suddenly, a huge, terrifying monster appeared. She said the monster had arrived at the perfect time and ordered him to fight it. Kinji was shocked and said he wouldn't be able to fight it. She responded by saying that he should try because those who don't try will never know their capabilities. She continued fighting the monster herself, and strangely, she looked happy as if she were playing with a cat. She attacked with full force and managed to defeat the monster with one blow. Kinji stood at a distance with a giant ant and said to himself that this woman was no pushover, and he needed to be careful. Kinu approached and kept moving forward. When she saw the ant, she got angry and asked Kinji why he hadn't killed it. Nervously, he replied that the ant was afraid of him and had no intention of fighting, so he wouldn't kill it either. Kinu got angry and said he didn't deserve to be in the company if he couldn't kill every monster he encountered. She also said that if that was the case, he was also a monster and deserved to die. She attacked him, but suddenly Rimu appeared and shocked Kinu with her strength. Kinu became even more upset because Rimu was working with a monster. Kinu attacked Rimu with a sword, but Rimu got angry and suddenly transformed, her body growing larger. Rimu struck Kinu with one blow, sending her flying. Rimu returned to her normal form while Kinji just stood there, stunned by what had happened. They captured Kinu and tied her up. The queen ant also joined them. Kinu was told that partnering with monsters was a great betrayal to the company. Wannabe arrived with a giant ant, using it as a means of transportation. He was shocked when he saw Kinu and felt extremely afraid. Kinji told him that Kinu had discovered that they were allied with monsters. Wannabe started to panic and said that if the company found out, they would be in big trouble. However, Kinji calmed him down and said he had a plan. He took a picture of Kinu with the monster to show that she was involved as well. He told Kinu that if she wanted to give up her position as a hero, she could report them. Kinu was furious and said she would never forgive them and would destroy them. The next day, Kinji was walking down the street, saying that he needed to find a solution to Rimu's problem, as she had spent all his money due to her eating habits. Suddenly, he was surrounded by strange people and taken to an alley. A strange girl appeared and said to him, "Do you remember your debt? Or have you forgotten?" She told Kinji that he had only 1 month to repay his debt, or he would be killed. The amount of his debt was enormous, and he didn't know how he could pay it off in a month. Kinji went to Dams and met Wannabe and Kinu, who agreed to stay with him and help him with his mission. Kinu kept talking, but Kinji was in another world. Wannabe asked what was wrong with Kinji, and Kinu replied that he had been like that since the morning, and no one knew what was going on with him. Kinji remained lost in thought, thinking about the 5 million he had to repay in a month. Kinu lifted him up and said that he needed a little encouragement and energy. Kinji was angry and kept speaking harshly to her, but Kinu ignored him and kept walking. Kinu acted as if she was their leader, telling them what they should and shouldn't do. She said they needed a lot of practice to reach her level. They kept walking until they encountered a group of monsters. Kinu got excited and told them to prepare for an attack. They attacked the monsters, but both struggled and couldn't even defeat a single one. Kinu said that what mattered most was gaining experience. After finally defeating the monsters, both of them were exhausted. Kinu told them that some parts of the monsters held a great amount of magical energy, so they gathered those parts to earn a reward. Kinji asked, "How much is this horn worth?" And Kinu replied that a pile of horns was worth 1,000 coins. Kinji was shocked and said that at this rate, he would only be able to gather 5 million in a year, not in a month. Suddenly, he had a new idea and thought of opening a monster farm, raising small monsters, and taking care of the larger ones. He told the workers that they could take important parts from the monsters and let them live, as those parts would grow back. However, a strange earthquake suddenly occurred, and Kinu fell, but Kinji managed to catch her at the last moment. We then switched to the company president, who said that he needed to find a new hero as soon as possible because a strange monster called Majin had appeared and was killing workers and explorers. The number of victims continued to rise, and the president said that the only way to save the company was to sacrifice someone with high magical energy to feed the monster. He planned to sacrifice one of the heroes to save his company, and the first person that came to mind was Kinu. We returned to Dams, where Kinji was fighting and kept shouting as he fought the monsters, as if he were the one in the battle. However, as usual, he started shouting at her, asking her to stop yelling because it was giving him a headache. She replied harshly, saying that he had to shout because he was constantly being tossed around. Shyla intervened and said that they were overreacting, reminding them that he hadn't even had the chance to say thank you, even though his attempt to save her had been a total failure. She replied, saying that the situation was too dangerous to remain in the middle of the monsters, and asked if there was a tool to get them out of the Deimos dimension immediately. Shyla responded that there was indeed such a tool, surprising Kinji, who asked why she hadn't mentioned it earlier that morning. Shyla took out the tool and explained that it was very special and rare and should only be used in emergency situations. Shyla also added that the tougher the challenge, the more fun it was for her. Kinji was shocked and said that she had a strange perspective. Suddenly, a large monster appeared and attacked Shyla, throwing her far away. Shyla was surprised and said that the monster had been after her. She tried to fight it off, but its strength was unusual. In her mind, she wondered if the monster was one of the Majin types. Shyla couldn't defeat the monster and became very tired. Kinji approached her and said they needed to retreat, asking Shyla to use the tool and stop being stingy. Shyla replied that even if she decided to use it, there was another problem. The tool could only transport one person. She told Kinji to leave her and run away. Kinji was shocked and said, "Are you giving up just like that?" Shyla responded that as a hero, her job was to defeat monsters, not run away, no matter how strong they were. As she tried to use the tool to transport Kinji, Kinji stopped her, grabbed the tool, and threw it at the monster. He then countered the monster's attack, pushing it to the surface. Shyla stood frozen in disbelief at what Kinji had done. Meanwhile, the leader stood with the team commander, and suddenly, they saw a Majin monster in front of them. Shyla was still recovering from the shock, while Kinji kept calling her to get up. Shyla yelled at Kinji, telling him that she knew what he had done. Kinji responded that all he did was think smartly, and now they had both survived the massive monster without anyone needing to sacrifice themselves for the other. Kinji assured her that he wouldn't hurt anyone as long as Shyla was with him, though the monster might return soon. The vice commander held the leader and asked how the Majin monster could have surfaced. With great difficulty, the commander said he was innocent and knew nothing. Kinji quickly mobilized the ant troops and told them to prepare. He asked the queen about Rim's whereabouts, but the queen said she couldn't find her. Kinji grew worried and said that foolish girl always disappeared when he needed her the most. Kinji sat on the throne, and Lumbi approached him, asking what was happening. Kinji replied that he would soon see it for himself. Suddenly, the Majin monster appeared and moved swiftly towards them, but it fell into a trap made by the ant troops. Once the monster fell into the pit, they immediately dumped bags of cement onto it. Shyla used her magical powers to freeze the cement so the monster couldn't move or escape the hole. Unfortunately, the plan failed, and the monster, stronger than the cement, easily broke free. Kinji told everyone to stay calm and prepare to execute the second plan. Kinji told Shyla to rest and gather her strength until she was needed, and this time, he would replace Remington. They started a new plan by tying Shyla to a cart while the monster chased after them. Shyla asked why they were doing this to her, and Kinji answered that he was a smart man who made use of everything. This way, she could rest and still be useful to them. Kinji remarked that the monster seemed very eager to catch Shyla. Shyla replied that the monster needed magical energy, and the only way to defeat it was to give it so much magical energy that it would explode. Kinji used the monsters at the farm to set another trap for the Majin monster, which eventually fell into it. The liquid filling the trap was highly flammable, and the plan was to burn the monster. However, this plan also failed as the fire had no effect on the monster. Instead, it made it even angrier. The monster attacked them with immense force, forcing everyone to retreat quickly. Shyla said that the monster had lost control of itself, and the only solution was for her to do her duty and sacrifice herself. Kinji became furious and said that Shyla was as crazy as her father. Shyla was shocked to learn that Kinji knew her father. She explained that her father left them because of his obsession with power, which is why she joined Rise's company. Kinji retorted that Shyla had no personality, allowing others to control her actions and thoughts, that she had no goals or dreams, and all she knew was how to fulfill her duties. Shyla was stunned by his words and deeply affected. Kinji said that if Shyla didn't know what freedom meant, he would teach her. They began the third plan, and Kinji threw a bomb at the monster, laughing in satisfaction. Shyla, now motivated, said she would show her true power. She attacked the monster with all her strength and managed to bring it down. Kinji laughed, saying this was the result of his brilliant plan. However, the monster got back up and shattered the surrounding rocks, shocking everyone. At that moment, Rem appeared at the last second. Kinji belonged to her, and only she was allowed to eat or kill him. Rem transformed and was able to defeat the monster in an instant. Kinji thanked her, saying he thought he was surely going to die. Then, Kinji said they should celebrate this great victory, but suddenly, a red crystal lit up, and no one understood what the crystal was. Suddenly, a hole identical to the one that had brought Kinji to this world appeared, and both of them fell into it. But what do you think would happen? Could the hole possibly return him to his old world again? And indeed, that's what happened. Kinji woke up and found himself in his big house. He laughed loudly, not believing it. He said, "Finally, I'm free from that foolish world and back to my real life." He turned on the television and discovered that the country had been destroyed because of Remington. He was utterly shocked. Suddenly, he heard many voices beneath his house. Crowds of people and journalists were standing outside, waiting to interrogate him. Kinji started shouting, saying he had nothing to do with any of this. Suddenly, he found Rem standing behind him, saying she was hungry and approaching him with fire blazing in her eyes. As she attacked, Kinji woke up terrified, realizing it had all been a dream. He hadn't returned to his world, and he found a strange girl standing in front of him, asking him to save their world. Kinji asked, "Who are you, girl?" She said the last thing she remembered was being with her friends in the dungeon and asked about Wannabe and Kinu. The girl became nervous, forgetting what she wanted to say, then closed the book she was holding. She told Kinji that they were on the brink of extinction and needed a hero to save them. Kinji stood silently before her, wondering, what madness is this in the morning? He told Rem that she would get the food she wanted if she could destroy that wall. Rem heard him and immediately cried. Kinji was shocked to see the strange place they were in, not understanding what was happening. Another man appeared, introducing himself as Zatsi, the city's leader, and introduced him to Ranga, a famous wizard among them, though she seemed a bit nervous. They all left the strange place, and Zatsi told Kinji he would explain everything. The story began 300 years ago when a strange company appeared and threatened the world by using humans as slaves. The slaves became the largest group in the world, weakening the world. The Demon King took advantage of this opportunity and attacked humanity to take control. All the survivors gathered in this underground place, which had now become their new world, but their resources were starting to run out. If this continued, they would face extinction. Thus, they decided to summon a hero from another world, and Kinji was that hero. Kinji realized he had been brought to the future to see a world destroyed by Rise's company. They entered the strange place and found many people waiting for Kinji. They cheered, calling his name. Zatsi said that all these people had been waiting for him for a long time. Kinji replied that they were just failures relying on someone else. He left the place, and Zatsi chased after him, begging him to help them. Kinji, annoyed, said that this was their world and they should solve their own problems. Suddenly, Zatsi changed his demeanor, pulled out a gun, and threatened Kinji, saying that no one else but him could fight the Demon King and save them. Kinji replied that no matter what Zatsi did, he wouldn't be afraid of them and wouldn't help. Zatsi said that if Kinji could defeat the Demon King, he would be able to return to his world. Kinji was surprised and didn't know what to do. He and Rim prepared to explore this world to find out how to defeat the Demon King. Ranga joined them, and Zatsi said she would be their guide. Kinji felt annoyed and said that Ranga was useless and would only slow them down. The three of them emerged to the surface, and Kinji was shocked by the destroyed scenery. Everything was utterly ruined. They were on their way to the Demon King's castle, and Kinji never imagined that the foolish company he worked for would be the cause of all this. Suddenly, he noticed that Rim had changed and realized that she was hungry and might end up eating both of them. They rushed toward the Demon King's castle to avoid being eaten. Upon arriving at the castle, they began to think of a way to enter without being noticed, but foolish Ranga used magic to blow the castle doors open. Kinji, furious, told her never to think or do anything without his permission again. Ranga, shocked, asked, "Didn't you want to meet the Demon King?" Suddenly, a large three-headed monster appeared, extremely angry, saying that the place they had blown up was his and that it was a public ant farm. Kinji, surprised, started yelling at Ranga, blaming her for leading them to the wrong place. Kinji asked Rim to attack the monster and defeat it, but Rim was nowhere to be found. It turned out she had already entered the castle and destroyed most of it in search of food. The monster captured Kinji and Ranga, taking them to the leader of the ant warriors. However, the leader was shocked to see Kinji and said that they had been together in a dungeon before and fought alongside each other. Kinji, astonished, remarked that the leader's appearance had changed a bit. The leader responded that he had been promoted and was now a true monster. The leader liked Kinji. He welcomed them and offered food and drink, which, of course, Rim ate entirely. The leader explained that most of them had been hiding underground with other humans, but he and the other ants had joined the Demon King and now controlled part of the land. Suddenly, a furious human barged in and flipped their food over, telling the ant leader that he wouldn't allow them to control humans any longer. Rim attacked him, saying she would kill him for overturning her food, but Kinji stopped her and offered the man some food. Kinji told the man to speak quickly before Rim got angry again and ate him. The man said they were tired of working in those conditions and couldn't handle it anymore. They worked 8 hours a day with only 2 days off per week. Everyone was shocked when he said that was considered a luxury. He told the ant leader that they had tried giving humans all their rights, but the humans were still dissatisfied. The leader was disheartened, unsure of what else to do. Kinji suggested that he seek advice from the Demon King. However, the ant leader replied that, unfortunately, the Demon King never showed himself to anyone. Kinji told him not to worry, that he would take care of everything and fix the situation. Kinji renamed the place from Public Ant Farm to the Dark Company and resolved all the problems. Humans who did not follow orders would be severely punished, while those who were obedient and hardworking would receive great rewards. Kinji returned to the humans underground and informed them that, unfortunately, some changes had been made. He was now on the Demon King's side and had become the deputy head of the Demon King's department. He decided to take control of their city. Kinji assured them not to worry, that life would improve as long as they followed him. Kinji became famous worldwide, but also gained many enemies who wanted to take him down. We meet a mysterious man accompanied by 2 demons. They discussed how Kinji was a significant threat and could destroy their lives if left unchecked. They were on a mission to kill the monster that had been unleashed by the Demon King's forces. A demon named Ash stood from afar, observing them, planning how to gain Kinji's trust by pretending to save him. However, Rim managed to kill all the monsters within minutes, including a giant worm that ultimately joined them to serve Kinji. Ash was shocked and furious that her plan had failed. Her 2 companions, Harley and the old man, also observed. Harley remarked that he knew from the start that the foolish plan wouldn't work. The old man, angry, said he would handle the situation himself and force Kinji to join him. Kinji and his team moved on to their next mission, turning the destroyed land into farmland. The old man watched them from a distance, confident they wouldn't succeed. But Kinji utilized the worm's power to make the soil fertile. Ranga used her magic to accelerate the seed growth. The old man was shocked by their success, while Harley said that they both needed to learn how to work from Kinji. The old man tried to gather information about Kinji but found nothing. He then attempted to use information about Ranga, but his plan also failed. Kinji, realizing they were being watched, enjoyed seeing their plans fail. He told them to prepare because now it was his turn to show them the proper way to plan. The three demons were shocked and furious. The old man couldn't believe they had been humiliated by a human and was determined not to give up. They promised to deal with Kinji without the Demon King's knowledge. The old man vowed that Kinji's days were numbered and that he would end him. Meanwhile, Ranga had a strange dream about her painful past, where the Demon Queen was responsible for the world's destruction and her family's death. She felt trapped in a nightmare and couldn't escape. The queen wanted to imprison her there forever, but Kinji appeared and woke her up. Ranga finally came to her senses, not knowing what had happened. She saw a robot monster in front of her and remembered their mission, where a giant monster attacked her with a strange magic beam, causing her to lose consciousness. Kinji said that the most important thing was that they had won, and he had been promoted to a board member. He was getting closer to his dream of returning to his own world. Ranga mentioned that she was always running away from problems, and Kinji replied that it couldn't go on like that. This may be wrong, but as long as the goal doesn't change, you should still be proud of yourself. They continued their journey, and finally, the time came for them to meet the Demon King. With high spirits, Kinji and the others entered. To their surprise, the Demon King was weak. They were all shocked because the queen looked a lot like Remington. The queen rose and started boasting, claiming to be the strongest in the world and that no one could defeat her.